So what's in the gear right now, listen up, is as follows. The whole point of the MAAMER is to explain the chidush, what happens in Mokem HaMikdash, where there, notwithstanding that there's also the fusion of Havaya and Elikim, the two components of creation, not just Shem Havaya alone. V'chen yesh Havaya b'Mokem hazeh means that Havaya is revealed by Mokem in Shem Elikim. The MAAMER doesn't say this outright, but it seems a shtickle diuk, because Shem Elikim produces time and space. So it's not just Shem Havaya revealed, but the Mokem hazeh in Mokem and Zman. So the fundamental question is, it's incompatible. Havaya is bligvul, and Elikim is gvul. How does this happen? So as you see in the notes, you can see later, I'm not going to repeat it. There are 4 answers to the question. Now, the chiddush of this MAAMER is to explain that the reason that they are seamlessly one is because they feel their source. In other words, the nekuda, which I write in the notes a little bit, could have been more barichas, is the biyurim till now are either mitzat atzmos, everything's possible, no question, it's not an answer. It's saying it's not a question. Atzmos is noise afachim. The Eibishter is the source of opposites and bears opposites. When Atzmos is revealed, the impossible can happen. It's not the MAAMER. The MAAMER wants to explain it up Yiseichel, because that's what Hashem desires. We understand creation, even this, to some degree, Ezet Tfis, as he says in the Ha'ara, in Seichel. So that's not what we're speaking about here. We're also not speaking about the biyurim given in the Maimorim to explain that the MS, even the Helem, is part of the process, the Tzimtzum is part of the Gilum. And one of the explanations he just gave was that in order for Shem Havai, which means God's creative power, or if it even simply pushes the language, in order for it to be known, even by finite creations, that there's an Eibishter, and therefore to reveal him to that degree, that requires Shem Elikim to create a finite creation, and this finite creation nonetheless knows the Eibishter. Therefore, it's expression of Gilui, that the reach of godliness is so far that even a Nivra knows that there's an Eibishter. A finite Nivra knows and is connected to the infinite creator, the infinite power of the creator. That's the answers given elsewhere. Or another answer elsewhere is that for the Rav, the moshel is not master, as we explained at length. It's not the explanation here. The explanation here is, here's the chiddush of the explanation here. All those explanations are predicated on the perspective that have Elikim is a chsoron, Gvul is a chsoron, and big Gvul is a mile. Bigger is a mile, smaller is a chsoron, even in Gvul. All the explanations we just gave reconcile. Despite its chsoron, it's useful. Despite its chsoron, the master sees within it the seichel in the moshel of the Rav in the Talmud. Despite its chsoron, Atmos can unite chsoron and perfection, shleimus and chsoron. Not the answer here. The answer here is that for the Eibishter, there's no chsoron, there's no mind. One is not a chsoron, one is not a mind. So all these hesbedim have their virtue. These hesbedim have the big mile of the other hesbedim is they're explaining the yichud even mitzad avayin elikim gvul and blig. That's the mile of those explanations. The mile of this explanation is that to begin with, mitzad the Eibishter, not Atmos can combine opposites, chsoron and mile. The chatchila there's no chsoron and mile. In the words of the MAAMER, shekach olam b'rtzoynoi, One is not more him than the other, and therefore they cannot possibly contradict each other. So in a place where that is revealed, that truth, that's the Eibishter's invitation to know that truth in Kodesh HaKadoshim, MAAMER. So then Havai and Elikim are one. Because it's patently, because as he says in the Order 66, not like the Bi and the Drushim mitzad Inyona. They're explaining it mitzad in their own worlds, how they can be compatible, which is in a way a bigger chiddush to me. But here is, as he says in the beginning of the Order, their virtues are no milus period. And they feel they're shayrish. The Eibusher chooses this or that. It's all equally him. It's different than saying the Eibusher can combine opposites, where there you're acknowledging that they're opposite and there's a mile here and a chsaron there. It's going deeper. That the whole shayrish inyan is equally the Eibusher. Havaya hu likim. That who Atzmos expresses himself equally in Havaya likim. One isn't a mile and one is not a chsaron. And therefore, in MAAMER, you can have mamish, hardcore time and space in Mokim, and nonetheless, Havaya, high in Mokim is equally revealed there. These are still just words, friends. So it's sort of iyun Godol to understand this, but as the MAAMER itself acknowledged in the Order, you have some grasp here, but not we fundamentally cannot, because if you can't imagine what we're talking about, how can you possibly understand? I mean, what I mean, imagine is you can't even picture it as a mitzias. It happened. You can't picture it. You cannot picture it. So you can't picture it, then obviously it cannot be a complete understanding, a complete grasp. But in concept, in Higoyen, in the language of Chassidus, or in the language of the Mashpiyim, in Higoyen, in the abstract understanding of the subject. This is understand the limit of our understanding. Good. So you look at Gvul and then MAAMER, Eibishter. Ligvul, Eibishter equally. No problem. It's the Chibur. What does it mean simultaneously? So just to put some oasis to it. When you look at Gvul, you're not saying that's your exclusive revelation. No. The Gvul itself says, I'm not the only. He chose another way as well, because they feel the shayrish. So the Gvul says, there's Bli Gvul. And you look at Bli Gvul component, the Gvul says, you think it's just me, this fancy magic here. Hi, there's man. No, but he chose also Gvul, just as he did me. So each one is because the notion of the order, because the Nirga Shorsham, their source, so each one says, not me only, don't get stuck here. It's also Bli Gvul, it's just as much in. And Bli Gvul says Gvul is just as much in. So again, this is putting it almost in comic book language, but in conversation, it gives us some understanding that one is not master, the other one doesn't claim, in other words, exclusive expression. The Eibishter is a Bli Gvul. The Eibishter has expressed himself in Gvul. That's obviously never going to be a claim. But in the world where they're margish the shayrish, it could be. Let's go even further. Conceivably, the Eibishter could decide to express himself not at all or only in Gvul. And Bli Gvul wouldn't exist, friends. Listen to these words as we're talking further gets clear. Bli Gvul would not exist infinite. It's not a given. That's what's higher than Gvul and Bli Gvul equally. So if the Eibishter would choose to express himself only in Gvul, that would be the only expression of the divine. He could express it, and Bli Gvul wouldn't exist. And Gvul would be Elikus. That's how Elikus is revealed. Or the other way. The Eibster chooses to express himself only in Bligvul, and Gvul wouldn't exist. So in Mokim HaMikdash, what are they saying? What are these two expressions saying? Because they feel they're shaydish. They're saying, this is what happened, Kidalach. He could have chosen to express himself this way, or only that way, or no way. But the emes is he chose to reveal himself in these two ways. So each one is pointing to the other and saying, that's a likus as much as I am. That's him as much as I am. Why? Again, in the words of the order, because the shaydish is felt. Each one points to the shaydish. I'm not an inherent miler. This is the way God chose to express himself. Again, it's comic book language because the conversation as if there's something other. But just for the, I'm employing this just for purposes of some understanding. Somewhat clear. Yeah. Love it. Processing. What? Revving up the engines. Okay, maybe I'll put this in writing as well, just this last test bit, so you can have it and reread it and see it. It's a nice thing to know who writes nowadays. You show me the writing part. Type. You lose the skill if you don't use it. Like anything. Okay, Eis-Tess is going to explain that the pure gidley of this truth is dafka beis mikdash hashlishi, as opposed to the early bati mikdashes and what was revealed there, even though there too is makim modern enim and amida. So maybe we're going to have, therefore, further hesed. Okay, let's begin Eis-Tess. Just to repeat again without a little bit, it sounded like and it's repeating himself to help a little bit in Hasbara. We are programmed because we're part of creation, part of Ishtalshalos. We are programmed, it's just a given that bigger is better than smaller, whether it's in quantity or quality. And Bligvul obviously is infinite, blows us away, and that's certainly greater. And the Eibster wants us to have this perspective because that's what Dirab Tachtonim means. That we're stuck in Tachten. In order to be a Tachten, you have to have an alien. No Tachten without an alien. So therefore, because this Ava Kodesh Baruch Hu Liyis Baruch Dirab Tachtonim, right there is plurality. There has to be plurality. There has to be a higher and a lower. It has to be closer and further, otherwise there's no tach. This is all this ave. We need to say, like Atzavos, there's no reason or value, as you've heard endlessly. The Dirab Tachtonim is not why God created. There is no why. It's what the purpose is. Why do you need a purpose? No answer. Like, why does God exist? No answer. Not because we don't have an explanation, because there is no answer, because there are no questions. He created questions. This is utterly beyond the whole world of questions. It only starts in Ishtalshalos and who knows where. It starts right away. Right? But at any rate, the Eibster is, that's all he can say. He is because he is. Likewise, the Nisave is because he chose. So what did he choose? He chose the Tachtonim, and right there already has to be alien, higher and lower, Vulam Bligvul. Tachten is not a Tachten without an alien, period. So therefore, Tachten, so what does he want? That we, stuck at the bottom of this whole Ishtalshalos, should acknowledge, first and foremost, we are the smallest and the lowest, and the furthest. And that should engender a tzimoyin and a longing and all of the things that. Then, big chiddush, the Dira, where does he want? In the Tachten, not in the alien. That's what he wants his Dira to be. What the MAAMER is laying bare here is that at the core Alien and Tachten for the Eibishter, one isn't Milo, one isn't Chsodden. It doesn't have to be Gilui altogether. We're going Mabishter. So when the alien and Tachten feels that, when creation feels that, that's in Mokum-Amikdash. The Mokum-Amikdash will say, Shashlishi, with this truth, Shekach Ola Britzoyne Shagili Sheloi Yia B'Shnei HaKam, important here, end of Eisches. The Bligmul Gvul, in brackets, Gili and Tzimtzum. Then of course they were, as we said before. If they're feeling the Shoirish, so each Gilui says, don't get stuck here, and don't get stuck here. Each shows both. So one opens to and points to and embraces the other. It cannot be mistaken. And that's very different to all the other Bigurim elsewhere that we said at the beginning of this year. Okay? A little more as border, maybe. I hope you're getting a sense here that in thinking Chassidus, Tracht Chassidus, again, they're so useful for a McGill student. Like, it's so easy to get lost in the geography, in the dargis. You step back, the kid is asking, what are you talking about? It's an Eibush, so what? There's a purpose, what is it? If you constantly put it in the most simple, fundamental terms, we're talking about the Eibush, we're talking about purpose and creation. In the most simple, like, back to the basics. If you always go back to the basics of what are you talking about, it's easy to understand, honestly, what's going on. And by the same token, it's easy to get lost. You learn thousands of my mother, lost in Dargis and so on. And Kalim and the Oyd and Toyu and Tikkun. Keep on asking the fresh question the student is asking. Okay, what are you talking about? What's the discussion here? Knowing nothing, just purely intelligent. You keep on thinking the mind that way, going back to the basics of what are we talking about? Without any preconceived notions. It'll become clearer naturally, forcing yourself to think in terms of clarity. Not deluding ourselves and having whatever understanding we can. Just constantly go back to the basics. Have that McGill student, that dialogue with him. What do you mean? What do you mean? What does it say? Tell me, explain to me. I want to understand. Knowing nothing. Okay. All right. Ha'tשכ. That's why every teacher knows, and every shliach knows. I'm assuming that they only really first understand properly and start teaching. Sitting there, the thousands of shiurim, listening. Start teaching it to somebody else. I know something. What do you say? So thank you, dear friends. So teach it to your wives, learn, whatever, teach it to yourself at least, start that. So the gilui of this truth, this is all the Zohar, that on the words that Yaakov said, said the Zohar, he said that this place is not an ordinary place. It comes out that Shem Elikim here is not ordinary Shem Elikim that eclipses Shem Havaya and it's far, it's lower. Here, it's not that way. Here, it's all reveals him and Shem Havaya is one. So this here, Bebeis HaShlishi will be mainly revealed the Ikir Indian in the third base of Mikdash. The matter is as follows. The Baisish and Vesheni, the first and second base of Mikdash, Shem Bedala, the Isis of Shem Havaya, they both express the four Isis of Shem Havaya, Sheroim Zim Al-Asasviris, as we know that for Isis into and convey the Asasviris. Right, Yud Chachma Hey Binava, so in the final Hey Malchus. Now in brackets, which bias is what? Bias Rishno Hey Ila Bina. First base of Mikdash is the first Hey Bina. Shal Yod or Gile Hay Yud Chachma. In Bina is revealed the Yud Chachma. The second Beis Hamikdash is Malchos. Shal Yodo Gilei Havav, in which is revealed Vavza. All right, so all 4 Isias, all 10 Sviras are revealed in the Beis Hamikdash. In summary, first Chachma Bina, and second Zoh and Malchus. That's by Station Risheni. By Shlishi, who Keser can move El. By Shlishi is Keser, as we said before in Sev Gimel, in that the Medrash says the Yov Aryeh, right? The month of the lion of, and Nebuchadnezzar is described as a lion, and the Abish is called Aryeh, the lion. That's what's the lion? Is the king of the beast. That's Gilead Keser. So by Shlishi, that's going to be the Iker, because that's what it's saying, that the Aryeh will come and build the third Beis Hamikdash. So the Yovei Aryeh Gilead Keser Shlomayim Mishtal Shalos, where the third Beis Hamikdash is a Gilead of Keser higher than Mishtal Shalos. Now, having said that, let's continue and understand what we said earlier in how it fits with and is expressed in this that we just said now. The Dafki Beis Hamikdash Shlishi is the Gilead of Keser. And hence, the true fusion of Havai and Elikim as explained in this mind. That's where we're going now. Now the Eses Svidas, so Gilui and Helem, Oiris and Kalim, and Shnei and Yonim. The two things. So we get Oiris and Kalim. So when can it be revealed? How can it be revealed? That the expression of Gilui and Helem, which in their own worlds are opposites, revelation, concealment, infinite, finite, Oiris and Kalim, different words for the same fundamental truth. So these two things, these two expressions, can be experienced as Hashem's names, and He is beyond both. Shemaisav Shel Kadosh Baruch Hu means God is saying, this is how I want you to refer to me, because I'll express myself this way in Gilui and in Helen. So how can there be a revelation of an experience that they are His chosen names, His chosen expressions, but He is both? They are Gilead Keser Shlomayim Mishtal Shalos. No, we're using just a simple model. Higher than Mishtal Shalos Keser, that's where the truth of higher than Gilead and higher than Helem is revealed. And that's the Yovei Aryeh, that's Dafka when in the Beis Hamikdash Shlishi. Now, just to hit the pause button for a second. You're kind of surprised. Keser, that's it. Speaking from it's at Atzmos. It's at Atzmos, they're the same. Bligvul and Gvul. Bligvul starts way before the Eses Sviras. Bligvul, in fact, is the Bligvul itself is the first Gilui of Atzmos. And then there's Eses Sviras, Knuzes, Etzemoid, so many targets that Chassidus speaks of, and here Keser. Keser is even after the Tzimtzum. Keser is after the Tzimtzum. And here we're speaking about surely lift that Tzimtzum and Tzimtzum. Bli Gvul and Gvul. What's the answer to my question? Anybody? That in the Darga of Keser should be revealed that they wish that Atzmos is the Ma'amer Mishneh. It's part of Mishtal Shalos already. When venture an answer, it's not such a big kasha. It is a big kasha.
The expression of Atzmos after once there's a symptom, Atzmos not something in Keser.
Okay, there are words too, but then the question is, how could that be? So the Tzimtzum, is it Tzimtzum or is not Tzimtzum? You're right. And just the answer I'm looking for basically is, as we keep on saying, everything is relative in Chassidus because, what do you mean everything is relative? Because the oneness and truth of the Eibishter, the truth, is carried through in all of his expressions, latently or obviously or subtly, but it's all present. And to use coarse language, we're not talking 50 gods, 50 Eibishters, one Eibishter. Eilov l'loyli midoisav. The famous Hayom Yom, that below, very deep Hayom Yom. Very deep. What does it mean? Eilov l'loyli midoisav. What I'm saying is, at the end of the day, again, it's in context. What are we talking about? The Eibishter is expressing himself. And that's forever true. And therefore, there are dargis. They're in Ishtalshalas throughout, is the atzmistic truth is carried. It's carried in Kesed in an obvious way, and that truth is not in lower dargas as well, much more subtle. Much more subtle. The oneness of everything, of all of the dargas, of all of Ishtalshalas is ever present. And therefore everything is relative. It's all relative, the models repeat themselves, and it's all just a question of context and what is the more obvious component here, what's more subtle, what's more obvious. At the end of the day, it's all one. It's all Eibishter. Pre-Tzimtzum, post-Tzimtzum, Oir, Kelim. In Kelim Gufa, there's the Dargis, and in Oir, there's the Dargis. So Kesed in general, the Baal Mishtal Shalos just more patently, more obviously carries this truth. What truth? The truth of the Eibishter is higher than from a bligvul until its chosen expression. As opposed to? Yeah, we'll get to that. It's not so obvious. No. Let's see. Yeah. It's going to spell it out. Okay, we'll stop here and continue tomorrow, Be'ezrat Hashem. As opposed to, relatively speaking. So this often has, uses the language, nirgesh. Here it's felt, it's not felt. What does that mean? It means the truth is the truth. Present everywhere, all dargas. This darga feels it, this darga doesn't. In the world of the darga, but the truth is the truth. Everywhere. And therefore, peeling back the layers and probing will discover the truth of Atzmos and the fundamental truth of his chosen expression of blue, Gvul and Blikvul being equal and everywhere. It's just where is it more obvious? And that's by divine design. He wants to create Ishtalshalas where it's not obvious. Not as the truth, not obvious at the bottom of the rung. It's actually ignored and denied altogether. I should say denied and ignored, because ignored is worse than denied. That's the worst route, being oblivious, ignored. Denying it, this is a relationship. No, not even a nose. That's what he wants. That's the tachten. And this tachten should be little bit tachten.